Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Coming to you from our awesome Central Washington location, which is not so awesome right now, because what you see behind us is our annual gift that we get from our Canadian neighbors, which is wildfire smoke. Speaking of blowing smoke, but though, I want to talk to you about a couple of issues. I've had a lot of viewers ask me why I hadn't done videos on these issues, and the truth of the matter is I hadn't done videos on it because the likelihood of either of these two things coming to fruition is somewhere between slim and none. But I kept getting comments on it. I getting a lot of viewers asking about it, and so I figured, hey, let's just kill two birds with one stone. Let's talk about it all together. So today, from the smoke here in Central Washington, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about a 1,000% gun tax, the 28th Amendment, and other stuff that is never going to happen. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you about two issues today. The first is House Resolution 5315. What is House Resolution 5315? Well, it's sponsored by Democratic House of Representative Don Beyer out of Virginia. And if enacted into legislation, this piece of legislation would in fact provide a 1,000%, let me say that again, 1,000% excise tax on the sale of all semi-automatic firearms, or what they call assault weapons. And that would be defined as the same definition which is in House Resolution 1808. Now, think about it for a second. If we have a general range of your bargain basement semi-automatic rifles to your really high-end, you're looking somewhere, generally speaking, between $500 and $2,000. A 1,000% excise tax would mean that there would be somewhere between a $5,000 and $20,000 excise tax added to the sale of each one of those firearms. Now, although this bill was sponsored by Representative Beyer, there was at least 24 other Democrats who have also signed on to this legislation. Now, I know we oftentimes talk about how they are hell-bent on civilian disarmament, not gun control. And if you don't believe me, take a look at a couple of the quotes from Representative Beyer in the Washington Post. The idea is to increase the price of certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s, to such a degree that it significantly limits accessibility to those guns, but stops short of a full ban. Yeah, and what you're essentially doing, however, is you are pricing a huge majority of the American public out of the market, including segments of the population that the Democrats claim they look out for. In addition to that, Representative Beyer also stated, it's trying to hit the sweet spot where it's not an all-out ban, but people's independent purchasing decisions would be much more no than yes. You want to shift the demand curve pretty significantly. Now, although we did a video about a year ago where they proposed this, we haven't really talked about the latest reiteration of this, because the bottom line is the likelihood that this is going to pass is somewhere between slim and none. This is likely never going to see the House a day. Let us remember that in the House right now, there is a 222 to 212 Republican majority. That would require at least a half dozen Republicans to shift over, and might I also remind you, it would require every single Democrat to stay firm. Now, in the Senate, although the Republicans have a 49-48 advantage, let us also remember there are 3 independents, all of which caucus with the Democrats. So the Democrats do have a 51-49 majority in the Senate. But again, that would require every single Democratic senator and independent to hold firm and to do this in an election year. So the bottom line is the reason we haven't really talked about it is because it's not likely to happen at all. Speaking of not likely to happen at all, let us also talk about Gavin Newsom's 28th Amendment. Now, it has a new fancy title called the Right to Safety Amendment, and the good news, Governor, is we actually already have a Right to Safety Amendment. It's called the Right of Self-Defense, or what I like to call the Right of Self-Preservation. It's codified actually in the Second Amendment. Now, Gavin Newsom's 28th Amendment would, of course, completely eviscerate the Second Amendment. We've already done a couple of videos on it. And if you're really interested to know what this is all about, okay, if you go to the website, to Governor Newsom's website, you will see that if you're willing to sign the pledge, you will also provide the good governor with all the resources he needs, should, God forbid, he ever run for president, to start an immediate fundraising campaign. Now, what the governor has called for is a constitutional convention. Now, that's going to require 2/3 of the states, 34, to agree to this constitutional convention. So, what's the likelihood? Now, earlier I stated the likelihood is pretty remote if the sole purpose of that constitutional convention is to talk about Governor Newsom's 28th Amendment. But where the governor might want to be careful here, because he could bite off a lot more than he may want to chew, is that if that constitutional convention is in fact called, well, then there are other constitutional amendments that can be put forward, including constitutional carry actually being instilled into the Constitution. And at the current time, there are only a handful of states short of the necessary number to make that happen. There are many other issues involving things such as abortion, gay marriage, and other things that this channel is not going to touch with a 10-foot pole, but that could also be brought to the floor if the governor gets his wish and gets a constitutional convention. So the bottom line is that the likelihood that House Resolution 5135 becomes legislation is about the same as the 28th Amendment actually being added to our Constitution, which is about the same as me deciding to run for Attorney General. That's the other thing that is never, ever going to happen. Now, listen, to my viewers out there who have suggested that, thank you very much, but no thank you, okay? More importantly, however, the likelihood that these two horrific, and I do mean horrific ideas, ever come to fruition are incredibly remote, and for that reason, you will probably never hear Washington gun law talk about them again. Listen, if you have any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now, but if you don't, that's okay. That information is right down there in the description box. Now, in the meantime, I do want all of you to remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.